A scream tore through the morning quiet, raw and sudden as thunder splitting open the sky. Then silence, thick and cold. Snow carried the sound away, leaving only the echo of fear trembling through the little town. When the townsfolk gathered in the square, they found her, barefoot, her dark hair tangled with frost, her wrists marked by rope. Someone had tied her to the old post near the well, the same post where notices were nailed, and horses tethered. Above her, nailed crudely, hung a sign scrawled with charcoal, $2. No one knew her name, or at least they pretended not to. She was simply the native girl, the one who had wandered from the ashes of the burned ranch 2 nights ago. The sheriff said she set the fire. The others nodded, eager to believe that guilt wore brown skin and silence. Now she stood still as stone, her breath visible in the cold. The snow kept falling, gentle as pity. Then came the sound of hooves, slow, deliberate, heavy with purpose. A man in a dust-stained duster coat rode into town, his hat pulled low, his shoulders broad from years of work and wandering. His horse's breath steamed in the cold as he dismounted. The crowd parted a little, not out of respect, but uncertainty. His name was Cole, a rancher once, now little more than a drifter chasing distance. He had left the valley years ago when the land dried and the law turned mean. But he'd heard of the fire. Something in the story didn't sit right. He looked at her. Not the bruises or the bare feet, not the trembling or the shame, but her eyes, dark and burning like embers refusing to die. And in them he saw something he recognized, the kind of quiet that only comes from surviving too much. The sheriff's voice cut through the air. Best ride on, Cole. This here's justice, not your concern. Cole didn't move. The wind carried a loose strand of her hair across her cheek. She tried to turn away, but her shoulders shook, whether from cold or rage, no one could tell. Then her lips parted, barely a whisper, fragile yet defiant. Don't look at me. The words struck harder than any cry could. They weren't shame, they were armor. A plea for invisibility from a world that had stared too cruelly for too long. Cole's knees bent without thought, sinking into the snow before her. The crowd muttered. He didn't speak at first. His gloved hand brushed the rope tied around her wrist, but he didn't untie it. He just looked, steady, quiet. Finally, he said, I wasn't looking to judge. His voice was low, a rasp shaped by dust and loneliness. Only to understand. Her gaze flickered up, cautious, uncertain. For the first time, the distance between them seemed to melt, just a little. The sheriff shifted uneasily, spitting into the snow. She don't need your pity, he said. She needs to learn. Learn what? Cole asked. How to freeze while good men watch. A few of the onlookers turned their eyes away, shame prickling like frostbite. The sheriff stepped forward, hand on his revolver, but didn't draw. Walk away, he warned. Cole rose slowly, brushing snow from his coat. If I walk away, he said, she's gone before sundown. You'll hang her, or sell her off. Same thing in this town. The sheriff's lip curled. She lit that fire. Burned your old place to the ground. Don't you remember what that land meant to you? Cole looked at the girl again. A scar ran along her collarbone, thin as a whisper. He thought of the ranch, the blaze, the screams, the scent of kerosene. He remembered seeing riders that night, not one of them small enough to be her. Maybe I remember more than you want me to, he said quietly. Her eyes widened a fraction, recognition dawning. He'd seen something. Maybe the truth. A gust of wind swept through, carrying the sound of the saloon's sign creaking. The sheriff muttered under his breath and turned away. The crowd, bored or uneasy, began to scatter. Only Cole and the girl remained in the square, bound by the silence that follows a storm. When she finally spoke again, her voice was smaller, softer. Why do you care? He hesitated, then said, because someone once told me not to look at them, and I did anyway. I saw what the world tried to bury. Her eyes shone with something between gratitude and fear. The snow thickened, erasing footprints, softening the world. He touched the rope gently, fingers lingering, then let go. Hold on, he murmured, though she didn't know to what. He turned and walked away through the white curtain of snowfall, boots crunching softly. She watched him vanish, not sure if she'd ever see him again. But as the crowd faded and the wind died, something in her chest, small, trembling, began to stir. The sign above her head swayed in the breeze, its letters smudged now by melting flakes. $2. She closed her eyes. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. Somewhere out there, a man had seen her. And somewhere, unseen yet certain, something was coming back to this town. Something colder than winter and hotter than truth. Gunfire cracked through the valley before dawn, tearing the silence wide open. The sound rolled across the snowfields, echoing off the hills like a memory refusing to die. By the time the town stirred awake, the sheriff's office was burning, its windows spilling smoke and secrets. No one saw who lit the match, but every man in that place whispered the same name, Cole. He was already gone by then, riding hard beneath the bruised sky. Wind ripped through his coat, stinging his face. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, toward the woods beyond the ridge. Somewhere out there, she was waiting, or hiding, he didn't know which. All he knew was that if the sheriff's men found her first, it wouldn't matter whether she'd spoken truth or lie. In this land, justice came cheaper than water. By the time he reached the tree line, the world had turned to silver and ash. He dismounted, breathless, calling her name, though he'd only learned it the night before when he untied her hands in secret, and she whispered, Ayanna. The sound of it still lingered in him, quiet as prayer, sharp as regret. He found her crouched beside a stream, her dress torn, her skin marked with new bruises. When she saw him, she flinched. For a heartbeat, she looked ready to run. They said you'd come, she murmured, voice trembling. They said you'd finish what they started. I didn't come to hurt you, he said. I came to make it right. Her laugh was soft, bitter, older than her years. Right? You can't buy right, cowboy. Not with coins, not with kindness. He dropped to one knee before her, the same way he had in the square. Then maybe I'll pay with truth. She studied him, wary but listening. He told her what he'd seen the night of the fire. Riders from the sheriff's own men torching his old ranch, framing her to cover their theft of the payroll locked inside. He'd been a coward then, too afraid to speak. But her eyes, the way they had begged him not to look, that had burned worse than any flame. Ayanna's lips parted, her breath catching. You saw it. I saw everything, he said. And I did nothing. The silence that followed was heavier than confession. She turned away, the stream reflecting her face, a ripple of sorrow and disbelief. Then you're one of them, she said. A man who watches and walks away. I was, he said quietly. But not anymore. The wind carried their words downstream, over the stones and away. Behind them, faint and distant, came the sound of horses. The sheriff's men were closing in. Ayanna rose, her body trembling from cold and fear. You shouldn't have come back. They'll kill you for this. Maybe, he said. But I'm not leaving you for them to finish. She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for any hint of deceit. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched his sleeve. It was the first time she'd touched him, not as savior or stranger, but as something uncertain and fragile. Together they followed the stream upward, climbing through the pines until the forest opened into a clearing. Smoke still drifted faintly from the valley below. Ayanna looked back once, then forward. There's nowhere to run, she said. There's always somewhere, Cole replied, though his voice lacked conviction. He could feel the weight of consequence catching up, the fire, the truth, the lives ruined by both. They reached the ridge as daylight began to fade. Below them, torches flickered, the sheriff's men spreading out, their shouts carried by wind. Cole took his rifle from his saddle, checking the chamber, then handed it to her. You ever shot before? Her hands shook as she took it. Only once. When they came for my father. Then once was enough, he said. She nodded, clutching the weapon to her chest. The horses drew closer, their hooves breaking branches, their anger louder than the storm rolling above. Cole turned to her one last time. If they find us, you run. Don't look back. And you. I'll make sure they stop looking. Lightning flashed somewhere in the distance. The sky opened in a scatter of rain and snow. She reached for him then, sudden, desperate, pressing her hand against his cheek. You don't have to die to be forgiven, she whispered. He caught her hand, holding it there. No, he said softly, but sometimes you have to bleed to make it mean something. A single gunshot cracked through the forest, startling the birds into flight. The echo faded into silence. When the sheriff's men reached the ridge, they found only the dying fire and a trail washed clean by rain. Two sets of footprints led into the mist, side by side, vanishing at the edge of the cliff. Down below, the river roared, endless, hungry, untamed. And in the mud near the ashes, 2 silver coins lay glinting beneath the stormlight, as if left there by ghosts who had finally learned to look each other in the eye.